This is a perfect chance. I will talk about it. This is something I meant to cover. Where did I put it? Yeah. You know what's something interesting about the gang? Again, this is never verbalized. There's a lot that never gets verbalized, which makes it almost more interesting to talk about. It's the cast, right? Gwen, MJ, Peter, Harry. Oh yeah, Harry was introduced. Like the gang, you know what their biggest connection is? They're all orphans. Like MJ lost her parents. Like she only has Aunt Anna. We don't know her backstory yet, but she only has her aunt. Peter, Aunt May. Gwen has only Captain Stacy, and Harry, his mom explicitly died. So there is like this element where they're all like they never verbalize it again, but there's a real emotional connection between all these characters. Harry and Peter do bond over that specifically, which genuine connection, beautiful, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Um, I don't know if like Ditko ever planned Harry to be a friend, or if Harry was just supposed to be a bully, because he's a rich guy. He could have easily been just a bully, but it's like when Ditko leaves, Harry immediately, in like literally the first issue after Ditko, it's like becomes a friend. So I don't know if that was in the plans, but it's such a good subversion. You think this rich guy is gonna be the bully of the poor guy? No, they bond over this genuine loss they've had. You know, Gwen is super attached to Harry's super has this thing where he needs his father's approval, right? That's the thing, right? His father, he wants time with his dad. And his dad, I think at some point, it's in a Ditko issue, I think, where it's like Harry's like, hey, what up, dad? And dad is like, shut up. There's like, he's kind of rude to Harry, and it's like they have like this kind of a thing where it's like there's a desperation there. Harry wants that connection. And, Gwen, super obsessed with her dad. Her dad comes before everybody else, even Peter. That gets tested. Peter comes second to Captain Stacy. MJ cares about nobody but Aunt Anna. She never verbalizes or really does much, but there's a connection there. She's always, a lot of times, with her aunt. So, again, they are holding on to their last family members. Peter with Aunt May, probably the biggest obsession, but that is, I don't know. Like, I don't really have much to say about it, but that is a thing. Harry's fall, thematically and story-wise, should happen because of his connection to his dad. Like, while Peter overcomes his loss, and, as does MJ eventually, Harry not overcoming it and becoming a villain, that fits. That's what it thematically, I think, should be. His fall needs to happen because of his dad, which probably will, but it should be because of that connection, that inherent need for approval. Thematically, I think it should be something where he never overcomes those wounds, and he succumbs to them. The thing that destroys him is the thing that the hero overcomes. It's a perfect, that's story-wise, I think that's where it should be headed. I don't know exactly how it falls happens. I'm guessing, I have my guesses, but I'm placing my bets now. That's where it should, if it's a good story, that's where it should be going. Yeah, also, something I missed earlier when I talked about, the gang being connected by trauma, Flash doesn't have a backstory. So he feels like an odd one out. He doesn't belong. He doesn't belong because Peter should not be okay with his presence. He should be seething so much more. But Flash, it's like he also is not connected by that trauma, so he just feels like he doesn't belong. He doesn't have that emotional connection, so that's the thing. Why I think I don't like him in the college year. I like the fact that he can knock sense into Peter sometimes, but it's just overall I think he just doesn't belong. After he returns from Vietnam, maybe. Yeah, Jameson is a very straightforward villain. Like, his first appearance, there's no humor to him. There's no comedy. He's just a douche. As the series goes on, it's like this, here, Ditko adds more slapsticks to Jameson. He makes funny faces, usually evil faces. It's like he's taking away Peter's money, and it's just he looks grotesque, and his facial features are out of bounds, and it's just ugh, disgusting because he's an awful person. And Ditko, I don't think Ditko likes Jameson. I think Ditko really despises Jameson. I think there's something going on there. I'm not here to psychoanalyze, but it's I feel like a dislike there. And it's I'll be honest, I don't like early Jameson much. I prefer Jameson the way Raimi does it. I think Raimi's take is the perfect way. He's an antagonist, but mainly funny. And it's like, to me, in Raimi's take, he represents this force, just life, kind of messing with him. Peter can't win, but you can't punch your way out. You don't punch Jameson. Jameson is just life's awfulness, but it's not cruel. It's not evil. He's just kind of a douche. To me, it's like when Ditko plays it too villainous, and I think that takes away from the humor of it. Yeah, it's like he's hiring supervillains and everything. Actually perfect. Like, we get to the next issue, which is Coming of the Scorpion, which is 7. I love early Scorpion so much. Oh my god. He hires Mac Gargan to stall Peter Parker, right? And it's like, that's just like, oh, that's next level creepy. But then he also gets the Spider Slayers and everything like that. It's just like, to me, it makes it less funny. You know, it's just like I don't take him as humorously, and I think those two ideas contradict. Ditko goes too far with it. I prefer him when he's just played as like a douche, but also a funny douche with funny faces. I don't like when they add in that element of straight villain. Yeah, it's like, I mean, like, the early Scorpion is a little weird, a little bit different from what we used to have. But it's like, to me, it's like, I like this. Here, Scorpion is treated so seriously. Something that has happened over time is that like, some of these villains are treated lesser. Like, Shocker is borderline a joke, as is Hydro Man, as is kind of Scorpion. But go back early on, like, they're a severe threat. Like, Stan Lee is like talking like Scorpion is the greatest threat there was, and I love that severity to them. Yeah, it's like, I've heard that Stan is like JJ thing too. It's like, it is probably at least somewhat. I think I'm sure there is some element to it, because they are both editors and whatnot, so it makes sense. JJ becomes a little bit more sympathetic. He has little moments. Like where he defends like his son, Captain Jupiter, I think is the bad guy's name, right? He wants to kill Spider-Man at James, and it's like, no, we don't kill. And it's like later on, it's like, like Smythe wants to kill Spider-Man. It's like, no killing. It's like, he gets little moments like that, which is something Raimi also has, where it's like, Goblin is like, who takes the pictures, and it's like, Jameson, it's like, I don't know, like, never heard of him. Pictures? I don't know anything about pictures. It's great. It's I'll prefer that when he has a little bit more complexity to him. Yeah, Robbie is like, I think Robbie is like one of those characters, when he gets introduced, he balances out. Like, to me, like, Jameson, once he gets Robbie is like this missing piece where it's like, he's there and it's like, oh, that's perfect. Like, it just completes the setting. It feels more busy without being like exhausting, right? It just makes it feel more lived in. They have like this dynamic where Jameson really respects Robbie, and it's awesome. And it's like, one of my favorite things is just the fact that it's like, when Jameson goes too far, Robbie calls him out, and Jameson will listen to Robbie. Like, Jameson is like his angry self, but he will be like, oh, when Robinson is like, hey, this guy is a terrible guy, don't, like, Jameson supports like a Bullet, and it's like Robbie's like calls him out on it, and it's like, Jameson listens. I love that. It's more human, and it's like, I like the fact that he's like not racist. He's just an asshole. It's such a great take on it. Yeah. So Flash and Peter and Ditko. That's what I'm talking about. So we get into like Flash, and Flash is weird because he's portrayed as a bully, right? He's kind of an antagonistic force. He's mean and awful, and then over time, Peter Parker gets like jabs back at Flash, starts to have banter there's more back and forth, and it makes their relationship not that hostile. Like, they don't get into a whole lot of fights. They just mostly Peter walks into a room and Flash is like, hey, you suck, and it's like, Peter is like, no, you suck, and it's like, it's a rivalry, right? It's kind of wholesome. It's not wholesome. It's funny to read. It's very endearing. I like reading that. I love that dynamic. It's a brain versus brawn thing, and it's great stuff. But then there are these issues where they portray Flash as so much more severe. Like this issue with Captured by Jameson here. It's like, I think this is the issue where it's like, God, like, Flash is so hardcore. Like, he's not just a bully. Like, he's chasing Peter down the street, and it's played for comedy. But that's not funny. That's awful. Like, I love this chase sequence, but it's like great. Like, Spider Slayer is chasing Flash, which is chasing Spider-Man. It's hilarious. But It's like that's not funny. Like that's not endearing. That's a completely different level of bullying, right? And there are times where it's like Flash is much more physical. Sometimes he grabs Peter and it's like I'm gonna beat you up, and it's like it's this kind of a thing where it's like messes with it again. It's like same with Jameson where it's like this takes away from the comedy, right? The whole the comedy and the more endearing side of it is where the strength lies. And the Ditko era takes it so far that it messes with it. And this keeps going. This is not just Ditko, this is Stan Lee as well. But it's like, it hurts it. Flash suddenly becomes a threat, and it's like, it's just not funny to see them banter. When Flash says, I'll beat you up, in some issues, it's just like, he says that, but he's not gonna do anything, which is like makes it funnier. Funny when Peter just walks away. But then the issues like these, he just like genuinely tries to assault Peter. There's another issue where it's like Peter has he tries to attack Peter, and Peter has to knock Flash out. He does it like 3 times during the run, which is actually a lot. It's nobody talks about it, but it's like such a much more like I don't think this story treats the serious side as seriously as it should, and the serious side harms the likability of it all. Yeah, it's like I think it's time the time period it is in, but I think it's something I don't like of the old Flash that much. It's like inconsistent. Sometimes I like him when it's a more about rivalry. When they do the physical stuff, that's where it's like breaks down. It's just, and this effect is a problem later on when they become quote unquote friends. Every single jab takes in like college, it just makes me seethe so much. It's like not college, but it's like past that. Like it's like when he goes to Vietnam or something. Like I'm seething that this guy dares to make jokes, and it's like this kind of a thing where it's just like it's not endearing. It's just awful. This is not friendly banter. You suck, dude. And he doesn't like. I don't know if one day they will. Is there's a storyline where they talk it through, but there's no reckoning for it. There's no what's the word, resolution to it. He's just awful and just like, dude, you chased this kid down the street. Like, what are you talking about? How dare you? Gwen Stacy yells at him in like I think it's in a Conway issue, which is so good, but so cathartic. But it's like there needs to be more. I don't like it. Yeah, it's like it's the cartooniness. I think it's like Ditko is treated. If you think of it as a Donald Duck comic, right? You wouldn't this is how bullies would be drawn. So it's that. It's kind of a balance where they try to have the grounded aspect, and it doesn't always mix with the slapstick side of it. The cartoon. So I think that is what is there. They're struggling with the balance a little bit. Oh yeah, I want to talk about Peter's character arc at one point. I actually have thoughts on that very much. But they don't explain why there is a rivalry. They just hate each other, and it's just a brain versus brawn setup. There's no reason. It's irrational. It's just kind of a thing. But it's like another thing. You know what? Actually, get into it. That's perfect bridge. Because this also applies to Peter. Peter, like, wait, what do I want to say? Oh yeah, Peter being a hothead. Peter is like often quoted as kind of an asshole in these early comics, right? He's kind of a douche, and it's like kind of. I call him brat. I think brat is the correct term. He throws temper tantrums, and it's this childish, immature little jerk. And there's this thing where it's like, okay, it's meant to be relatable and likable, and part of it, I talk about in one video where I really break down 2 different panels and compare the fits of rage, why one works much better and is much more relatable, and one sucks. I think there's an element where it's like a lot of these storylines, like when some people don't like early Peter. I love hot-headed Peter. I prefer my Peter angry. But it's like there's a thing where early on, he is so like he's supposed to be relatable angry, but he's not. And I think it's not the problem with necessarily always with the writing. I think it is just Ditko messing with the art, right? It's like the art, again, I break down that one panel from issue 1. Right, the art, it makes him look like childish and immature, and he's supposed to be, but it's like, it's not relatable. It just looks like, kind of like, okay, dude, like, that's just stupid. Right, the art, I think, has a big role to play in how you read Peter, how his actions are framed. Peter, when he's seething and angry, and he thinks like, oh, screw Flash, something about pulverizing someone. Like, Ditko doesn't portray him with a face of like of this mixed emotion. He portrays Peter with this face of pure hatred. Like, Peter genuinely looks like he's gonna murder someone, and I think it's too strong of an emotion. I don't think that's the emotion Peter is actually feeling. I think Peter's emotion is supposed to be more of a mix of sadness and loneliness with the anger. It lashes out, but that's not what he's really doing. He's not really angry, right? And there's an issue where Flash gets beat. I think it's actually like Spidey Strikes Back. Flash gets beat up, right, by some goons. He dresses up as Spider-Man, gets beat up for it. And it's like, Flash comes to school, right, and he's super aggressive. Like, it's a completely different Flash. It is one of the best scenes, I think, in the original Ditko books. You look at Flash's face, there's a like, this very complex emotion of, like, where his pride has been completely annihilated, and he doesn't know what to do with it. So he's lashing out in anger. But he doesn't actually hate Peter. He just feels hurt. And it's a wonderful, like, art. I wish I had it right now, but it's like this kind of a thing where the art captures it. And the earlier art where Peter is at his angriest, which is, of course, year one, over here. Not that issue. Actually, in this issue, he's seething. It's like in those year one issues, it doesn't have that complexity. It's just anger. Ditko fails to portray the sadness or the hurt that is behind it, or this. He goes too far with it. I think part of the reason why Peter comes across so bad is, I think it's just Ditko's art not all being best early on. It gets better and more complex, and you start to like Peter more. He's written better. Everything gets better as the creators get better. So I think you have to remember that when reading early Angry Peter. It's the art, I think, is actually adding to it. Same with Flash. Right, he's not supposed to be, I think, as awful, but the art, mixed with the, like, they want to have a goofy chase scene, and it's a very fun setup, but it doesn't mix when the storyline gives us so many scenes of Peter, like, struggling, like, emotionally, right? It's like, it feels a little, it's too much, and I think the art messes with the story. One thing about Peter, early Peter, somebody mentioned something, and I think I was supposed to mention it, but, like, early on, Peter is, this character who is alone, right? He has no friends, he's forever alone. And it's like this kind of a thing where it's like, well, why do people bully Flash? Why does Flash and the gang bully Peter? And that question is never answered, but it's actually kind of there. This is fully headcanon, by the way. I do not. This is not a canon by any means. Spider-Man. It's like Peter Parker lost his parents when he was young, right? His parents are dead. He never knew them, so he's raised by Ben and May. Okay, everybody knows this. But it's like, you think about how that would mess with a kid, right? It makes him, him becoming angry and having that chip on his shoulder has its roots in that childhood tragedy. And it's like, imagine being a kid, you don't know how to deal with it, especially 60s. Like, it's not, no, 50s, right? He would have grown up in the 50s. He would not have had mental health help. Nobody would have guided him through it. So he would have been stuck with this feeling of, like, when there's a parent-teacher conference, he would always know, like, oh, I'm different. So him growing to be isolated makes sense. Other kids would have probably picked up on the fact that it's like their parents showed up, Peter's aunt shows up, it's like, so him growing to be different, the kids would have picked up on that, so he would have created a separation between them. Peter, and maybe, being a hothead, might have grown up with a little bit of that anger, which makes sense, fully justified. So other kids react to it more, and it just becomes this loop that turns into Peter into a no-life loser. And I think that's such a wonderful little thing where it's like, it actually lines up very well. It's like, his character is rooted in that tragedy. And I had something specific I wanted to say about it, like a specific thing, but I have a note somewhere. Oh yeah, and one of the things I think about is losing his parents and not understanding other kids, because he's not going to understand why they don't like him or they do this thing. You never do, right? If you're being bullied, you probably know. There's no reason to it. I had a friend who once said, every single school, or at least every single class, has one kid who gets picked, and they're bullied for no reason. They're just a joke. There's no reason for it. He told me this to my face, which is, I think, my experience. Yeah, true. Being that kid, let me tell you, it's true. It sucks. It's irrational. So Peter Parker, being this kid, feels powerless, or a very big theme in the origin. Well, he might have sought, like, control through science. He can't control people. He can't understand people. But you can understand mathematics. It's fully logical. You can predict it, understand it, control it. So his science thing, actually, I think, in a sense, headcanoning it could come from that place of like seeking control as a lonely kid, right? You know, people make no sense, but at least the numbers do, right? It's like that's like a little headcanon I thought about, and it's like that's interesting. Yeah, I like the Angry Peter. Angry Peter has not been adapted like ever. Like 90s series cartoon, he's a nice guy because that's mature Peter. Spectacular, he's a little bit more angry, but you know, he's very nice. He's not nowhere any. There's a little bit of it in there, but nowhere near what the comics are. The video games, Insomniac, that's not an angry Peter at all. He's so nice. He's such a mature Peter. And you have the movies. Toby's autistic, which I like the fact that he's unique, and I'm not joking. I genuinely think he's written as an autistic character, and I think that's such a fascinating way of going about it. It's a fine take, but he's not angry like that. Holland lacks the anger. Again, they made him real super nice. Like niceness has become a go-to trait for Peter Parker. Like I don't know if that's the general public's idea, so that's why they keep doing it. But Andrew Garfield is the only one that I can think of, at least top of my head, that is actually angry. But even he is not quite the same level. But he's the only one who kind of captures that, which is nice. I really like Garfield's take for that reason. Andrew Garfield is weirdly the most accurate Spider-Man in that regard, and I wish we saw more of just angry Peter. Yeah, it's like I think Disney's gonna have a lot of effect on it, which is a shame. I miss angry Peter. It's just I like it. I just want it to be written better. But it's like when it's written well here, sometimes it does it well. It's just corporate Peter. Yeah, he is. But it's like at the same time, he is like Straczynski, inspired by Straczynski Peter, I think.